Recently, a friend told me that she would like to learn a new language, but languages like French or German were too difficult to learn, so she didn't know what to do. And I think this is an opinion that many people can relate to because we have a general consent on many languages. This language is impossible to learn. This language sounds funny. This language sounds rude. And that's one thing I absolutely hate because I think many people, instead of forming their own opinions and experiencing the language in their own terms, they just rely on other people's perspectives and they have opinions about a language that they have never studied. Let me tell you what, you're probably never going to find an easier language than French or German because there's none. An original native speaker is going to tell you that German is nothing complicated. While half of Russians speak German better than natives, the other half will say that it's impossible to learn. But today I want to talk to your mindset. How should your approach be while learning German? And this is not a tutorial or a guide on learning German. I have done several similar videos in the past and I can do other in the future. But I know many people while watching language videos, they're looking for the advice that's going to change their life from today to tomorrow, which does not exist on my channel. So today I'm only trying to help your point of view, your Standpunkt on the German language. If we agree on all these points, I think you can stay. I started learning German around when I was 15 or 16, I guess. And my native language is Turkish, which is absolutely not related with German, or which is not an Indo-European language. Currently, I also speak other Germanic languages like Dutch and Swedish, and since I'm living in Milan, German is the #1 language that I use during my travels because I almost always travel to a German-speaking country. And last year in November, I passed my German C1 exam. To be more precise, I passed Hexe 1 Hochschule. All this information obviously doesn't say that I'm an expert in German language, but I think they indicate that I'm a really experienced learner, so that's why I'm making those videos. While we're talking about my experience, I think it's also really crucial to precise that, linguistically speaking, I come from a francophone background. So before starting with German, I was really proficient in French, around the same proficiency in English, and I was a good learner in Italian and Spanish. So at that point of time, I thought every language worked pretty much in a similar way, because in Romance languages it's pretty easy and clear. Someone does something in a certain way, someone does something in a certain way with someone else, and they be doing this at a specific time. So to me, the real difficulty in German language was how you build sentences, because it's an entire mental work and you have to organize everything in your head before saying. So German is not that much of a flexible language compared to Romance languages or compared to Russian, which kind of made it challenging for me. But still, I appreciated having its own structure and everything following a rigid rule. This says a lot about the language in general. In my opinion, a way to manage the difficulties that you're experiencing with the German language is to build a daily learning routine around it and staying consistent. And while saying that, I would like to mention Lingoda, an online language school that I've used in the past years to learn German, but they offer other languages as well. Lingoda offers you online classes at many different language levels and on many topics with small group classes and highly qualified online teachers. And I also think their material is really practical for self-studying because it covers a lot of topics. And Lingoda helps you to stay consistent in your German learning because they have Sprint Challenge, which enables you to take either 30 or 60 classes in 60 days. If you participate all of your classes and successfully complete this challenge, at the end you can either get cashback or free class credits so you can continue learning. I find that a great opportunity, which I think it is because as a self-learner, I don't have a proper guidance while learning German because I don't have a specific teacher. While participating in those classes, I can actually get feedback after each class and I get to know to other people who are at my level. I can say that it helped me to gain more structure while speaking German and a knowledge about many different topics. My link in the description is going to give you up to 20% off while signing up for the Sprint Challenge, and if you use this exclusive discount code on the screen, you're going to get additional 20 euros. So make sure that you check it out. Why I want to convince you today that German is not as scary as you think is, I want more people to learn German, because I think German is a really rich language, and I don't say this often, okay? I say this for a few languages, and I won't tell which ones. But I find German to be a really rich language. I have the impression that in German language, the options are endless. And I like being extra, so I think you can do this while speaking German. It just makes me feel so smart, so organized, so eloquent. And it feels like it enriches my mind when I try to listen to something in German, when I try reading something, because it's like connecting all different points of the conversation since everything is just upside down. And I think many of you have already observed the complexity or the elegance of German language when you listen to German native speakers speaking English, because they will say stuff like, With reference to our meeting from past week, I would like to add that, or it's of utmost importance that we find a sustainable solution. Other than being useful for career opportunities or general culture or studying, traveling, whatever you think of, I think German is also linguistically useful because, as I mentioned earlier, I speak Dutch and Swedish entirely thanks to German. So if you are interested in learning languages like Norwegian, Danish, I think German is a good place to start. Obviously, those other languages are probably a bit easier than German because they don't have all the grammatical complexity. But I think it works in both ways because personally, I was a German speaker, non-native, who learned Swedish. And I have a friend who was a non-native Swedish speaker who learned German, and he says that German is nothing difficult, thanks to Swedish. So on top of all the real-world advantages that we're going to get thanks to German language, we also have a plurality of linguistic advantages. And I know here some of you are wondering about English. So how should I approach German as an English speaker? I think here the approach that an English native speaker and an English speaker should have are a bit different. I think the general point of view of many English native speakers, they're going to tell you that German is not that much of a complicated language, or it makes sense, and the speakers of Scandinavian languages are going to say this more than English speakers. This is my point of view. But if you're just someone who speaks English as a foreign language, personally, I don't think English is going to be like the most helpful thing ever, but I'm going to explain myself. English is a Germanic language, and core English, so the basic vocabulary that we use in everyday life, is almost entirely compatible with German. That's why many of you, when you just started learning German, think that German is always going to be easy because all the words just sound like their English versions. This impression fades away when you become intermediate, when you become advanced, and you see that German language gets really complicated and English stays the same. Grammatically, I think German is much more stronger than English. But not only, because I think grammar is a more limited aspect of language. Like, you learn several grammar rules, you practice them, and you have a certain grasp of the grammar of that language, right? But when it comes to vocabulary, I think only the core English vocabulary is compatible with German. And also some loan words or words that are quite the same in every Indo-European language, like democracy, I don't know, or discussion. But one thing I always mention for language learners who would like to decide between French and German is that, from the perspective of an English speaker, French is easier to understand, to relate to, because due to French dominance in England back in history, while talking about more complex topics, instead of while talking about going to school or having breakfast, French or Spanish are way easier. And please don't hate me for this, but I have experience in all of these languages I mentioned, and I'm not just saying, but English and German come from the same family. We all know that. But I just want to say that at higher levels, this similarity is more obvious between English and French, and not English and German. But still, German is not entirely distinct, because they come from the same family, they're cousins. But just keep this in mind and don't have a false illusion, okay? So what kind of grammatical differences German has? First, we could separate genders, but articles or separate genders in languages are not something that I always highlight because, as I said, I grew up learning French, so it was just quite a normal thing for me. It's quite normal for me that this chair has a gender. Another really popular problem with the German language is noun cases, which I think is quite understandable because in many languages they don't exist, but German is a language where they exist in a really small amount. To give you a really quick overview of German cases, let's say, mein kleiner Bruder spielt im Garten. My little brother is playing in the garden. But when your little brother becomes an object, you can say, ich sehe meinen kleinen Bruder. When he becomes an indirect object, you can say, ich gebe meinem kleinen Bruder ein Geschenk. Or when your brother is in possession of something, you're going to say, das ist das Buch meines kleinen Bruders. So I think the complexity is not there being a lot of cases in German language. For me, is that they all look quite similar. Or as mentioned earlier, German sentence structure can be quite complex. Let's say tomorrow she's going to Berlin. Sie wird morgen nach Berlin fahren. But when you say, I believe that tomorrow she will go to Berlin, it becomes, ich glaube, dass sie morgen nach Berlin fahren wird. So the verbs are at the end because we introduced das. Or when you say morgen mache ich das und das, it's not like ich mache, but mache ich, because we said morgen in the beginning of the sentence. And one thing I don't perceive as a problem, but I would like to mention in these difficulties is compound words in German language. I think that's such a non-issue. Like, German has crazy long words. How do you come up with this? How do you remember this word? When you're going to put together 2 or 3 words, it's going to be long, like you can't escape this. Let me give you a Finnish word. Kaksi kymmentä seitsemän. You can just be like, how did you read this? Like, you have been learning Finnish for 4 months, what's happening? Because it means 27, just like 27. Just like many other German words. I also experience difficulties with the German language. Sometimes I can't memorize a phrase. I make a lot of mistakes with my sentence structures and the order. During my German speaking exam, I catch my own mistakes. Sometimes I didn't fix them. Once I catch myself saying a different word than what I want to say, and it didn't make sense in that context. I also make mistakes in my native language, some of them which are influenced by German. I always say like Foto machen, to make photos, which we don't say in Turkish. So to avoid mistakes and get more proficient in German language, I'm going to give you some tips. First, I know articles are a problem for many of you, which I stated that is not the biggest problem, but if you really want to escape this, from the very beginning, learn words with articles, with der, die, das, and learn it with plurals as well. So you can learn like der Tisch means table, really good, but die Tische means tables, and preferably learn this in a sentence. Also, let's say you learn the word Entscheidung, a decision. But what do you do with a decision? Do you make it? No. Eine Entscheidung treffen, you meet a decision in German. Or you learn der Termin means meeting. What do you do with it? Einen Termin machen, einen Termin vereinbaren, like to organize, to schedule a meeting, to make a meeting, yeah? So when it comes to basic vocabulary like objects around the house or different food, you're going to learn them with articles and with plurals. But when it comes to more abstract stuff, try to combine them with a verb, which is going to really help you in German. And I think you should also master a few phrases based on your level. For example, zur Verfügung stehen, to be available, to be disponible, disponible. I don't know if disponible exists in English, but due to the complexity of German grammar and cases, you're always going to make mistakes. For example, one of my really frequent mistakes when I was a beginner in German and Russian languages was I always said, ich hab dir gefragt, I asked to you. But when you ask someone, that someone is an object. So you say, ich hab dich gefragt. Quite the same in Russian, but in both languages, I got this wrong. So I think at the end it's just a question of enough practice, enough theory, and getting corrected by people, because I had a lot of people telling me, get this correct for once, it's ich hab dich gefragt. Like, how do you keep making the same mistake? I personally believe it's easier to accurately use the noun cases in Russian than in German, because in Russian they sound all so different. Like, you can hear something, you're like, okay, this refers to that one specific condition between the person, between the object. But in German, it's like all the same. The question that you have is, should I put an N here, or is it N or M? Like, it's not phonetically super diverse. So I believe that it's easier to make mistakes in German when it comes to this. But also it means that your mistakes aren't as obvious as it would be in Russian. And also, if you like to get better at speaking German, you can be like, I always have to think a lot about what I want to say, or I don't have enough vocabulary to express ideas around a specific concept, or my sentences lack of some smart grammar. I think you should work around your level. Like, what kind of competence does your level require? For example, if you're an A2 learner who happens to talk about environment in German, you can say, die Umwelt ist wichtig, wir müssen die Natur schützen, die Autos machen die Luft schmutzig, or ich trenne meinen Müll. When you're a B2, you're expected to use more precise things and convey your ideas in a more complex way. So at the end you would say something like, Umweltverschmutzung hat viele Ursachen, zum Beispiel Industrie, Verkehr, Müll. You could use terms like umweltfreundlich, umweltschädlich, nachhaltige Energiequellen, ökologischer Fußabdruck. And to enrich your ideas, I think you could also take help from some grammatical structures according to your level. I think it's important to have some of them memorized, and with a lot of practice you can start using them naturally. All these stuff that you're going to use are a good indicator of the language level that you have, and they're going to make your speech sound more organized and more precise. So for example, while talking about environment, you could also say stuff like im Gegensatz zu fossilen Brennstoffen sind erneuerbare Energien nachhaltig oder umweltfreundlich. Or you could say sowohl Unternehmen als auch Privatpersonen spielen eine Rolle. In unserer Stadt steht keine guten öffentlichen Verkehrsmittel zur Verfügung stehen, to be available. If you use these kind of structures that at first are quite complex because they're often divided inside of the sentence, and you may get the cases wrong, or you may find it difficult to organize your ideas, but I think it's all going to be easier with practice. And one tip I can give you is that recording yourself while using these phrases in different sentences, so at least your brain gets an idea of how they should sound in a sentence. And you can always try to alternate your expressions. For example, instead of saying that companies are really important when it comes to environmental issues, you can say that they are playing a central role in this, as I just showed you with my examples. So if you were trying to fight the misconceptions that you had about the German language, I think you are already doing your best. So probably you can successfully learn this language. And see you in another video. Don't forget to follow me on social media accounts and obviously on my YouTube channel. Tschüss!